So this document, I'm going to put the link to that, or have Jennifer put the link to that in the chat in a little while. I think I can do it, Jennifer, when people are working. But this document is going to be available to you later, and all the activities and a lot of extra resources you'll be able to get linked on this document. So it's a one-pager. Everything we talk about today, it'll be here. So I just want to start by kind of giving you a heads up about what we're going to be going over. And so our plan today is to look at Desmos for K through 6, in specific about building classroom community at a distance. There's a lot of things that Desmos does and does very well. There's other things that Desmos can do. Desmos can provide a place where students can practice for proficiency and check their answers, but there are a lot of softwares that do that. Most of you are using iReady. That does a great job at that. And so what I want to focus on today in this session is what Desmos can do for you at this time when your kids aren't in front of you, to help you have that classroom community even though you're far apart. Because there are things that you do with your kids that just cannot be replaced very easily by any of the other things that we have. So before we get, or while we are going, you're going to get to experience an activity from the student's perspective. I think I just lost this, sorry. You are going to learn how the teacher dashboard works to facilitate the communication, and you're going to get to see a set of activities that you might choose to use. So as we begin, I'm going to have you do a little activity for me. During this, you're going to need, during this whole session, you're going to need to be able to see and hear the Zoom. So I don't want you to close out of the session. You're also going to need a browser tab. So that might mean you need to minimize your Zoom a little bit so you can get a browser tab. So go ahead and get that up, and I'm going to tell you someplace to go in your browser. So adjust your screen however you need. Okay, are we good to go? You got that? Perfect. Okay, you're going to enter student.desmos.com into the browser, just student.desmos.com. This should pop up when you get there. It won't say Leanne Branham. It probably says guest because you probably haven't been there before. Okay. I'm going to go back to my sheet. And I'm going to open an activity for you to just answer 2 questions for me, kind of let me know who you are and what we're doing. So this is what it looks like when I see a teacher, when I am doing a teacher activity, and I am going to open this up. So you kind of see, we'll talk about this more later. And when I'm going to run this with my class, I pop this open, and then this is projecting for my students when I'm in the room. You can share it like this when you're apart. They're going to go there, and they're going to enter this code. You don't have to enter this space. It's just a little easier to see when they're separated. If you're running a Google Classroom, you can also copy this link right here and paste it into your Google Classroom, and it'll take the kids right to the activity. They don't even have to type in the code. That doesn't work for us today. So, all right. So you are going to enter that code, and when you do, you should see an activity that looks like this, and you're going to just give me a feeling. You can slide your little cursor to show me how you're feeling today, tell me anything more, and do the second slide as well. So go ahead and answer those for me now. Jennifer, do we have any questions in the chat that we need to answer to help somebody? Are we good? Okay. Good.
We're good right now.
Thank you.
Leanne, we need for you to show the code again.
Okay, right up here on my screen, I have this little spot where I can click it for it to come back up again. It's F26S5C. So when I'm in a classroom of 35 students, that gets asked about 100 times. I tend to write it on my board, but even so, I'm really happy on my teacher dashboard that there's a place I can click and have that show up again right away. So I'm going to look at my summary and see how everybody's doing. So if you have finished your activity, there's only 2 slides. If you've answered both of those, you can again adjust your screen so you can see the screen I'm sharing. And this is my teacher dashboard, and I can see where everybody is. I can see that everybody's finished the first slide and not everybody's finished the second slide. In class, I would think maybe people were having trouble understanding how to do that slide. So I'm going to click to the student view of that. Oops, I'm on the first one. The student view of that second slide. So if you're having a hard time deciding how to do this, this little red point right here, I can slide it over. And so I'm going to slide to the grade I teach, which maybe it's 4th grade. And then I'm supposed to say how much Desmos comfort I have. Well, if I've never seen it before, I might be way down here. So that's, you're gonna plot a point.
It's Michelle.
Uh-huh.
My screen, it's not giving me the next button from that screen. I've moved it.
Right.
And it
so
doesn't allow me to move off of it.
So you did the first screen that was about the robot?
Yes.
Did you do the second screen?
I did, but on my screen, the next button never highlights, so I can't click off of it.
So there's only 2 screens in this activity, so you're never going to be able, you could click off the first slide.
Oh, so that means I have completed it.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Right. This was just for us. Honestly, I really wanted to see like what grade levels were here. So that's why I did this. But let me just show you while we're here what I can see. I'm right now looking at what the students are seeing. I clicked up here in the student view. When I'm at the summary, I can see that almost everybody has finished, all of them. Kim's still debating because she is helping a lot of grades, so she doesn't know where to put that point probably. And so I can see everybody's done there. That's really nice. If it's an activity where answers could be right or wrong, it'll actually give me a little check mark if they're right and a red X if they're wrong. So I can see, oh dear, Judy's having trouble. I better go over and give Judy some help. Or, oh dear, everybody's having trouble. I better stop people. So I have a lot of options there. Then when I want to talk about it with the class, or when I want to see how the class is doing, I can see people's answers all together. You guys are a pretty happy group. Nobody has a red robot, so that's really nice. I might want to see overlay, and then I can see where the dots fell on the line for the whole class. And again, I see in general, you are a pretty happy group. I have had a lot of days in the last couple of weeks where I've been way down here, so I'm glad I'm catching everyone on a good day. So that also gives me a nice chance to check in with the kids. When I'm looking at the individual responses, I wanted to make sure as a teacher that I read what Mary and Kim said. So this slide and some of these checking in slides, they won't come on any of the activities that we're going to do today. These are slides that are made by Desmos to add into an activity. So if you got to an expert point, you could do those. We're going to have a workshop tomorrow. I think it's at 9:30 on how to create your own, and you would be able to add in these checking on your kids kind of slides, which I really like for this time when we're not together. And then from this slide, I see that we're all over the board. I'm going to tell you, because a lot of you are watching this recording, that I pretty much was thinking about right here when I made this recording that you had very little Desmos experience and that you're teaching in the elementary grades. So even though we have some teachers who teach older grades, I love you guys, but I probably will be focusing mainly on the grades. So this is a nice way for me to be able to interact. And now I know a little bit about you guys. That's great. All right. So student.desmos.com, where you went, is where students always go to do any Desmos activity. And so that is a great That's a great thing to know. It's a different link than what teachers use. So we'll keep going on that in a minute.
Hey, Leanne,
yeah, question?
we have a couple of questions before we move on.
Okay.
One of them is, have you ever done this with kindergarten or first grade? The concern is there an easier way to log in? And then secondly, is there a way for students to tell if they are wrong when they're working through the problems?
So that varies a little bit on the activity that's being done. So first of all, for kindergarten, first and second, you have to be really careful in picking your activity to not be very wordy. So some activities are less wordy, and when you get to explore activities, you'll see a few, but there's just not a ton of activities at that grade level. I think where it gets rich is from third up, but there are a few that are really good. There is a way you can make logging in easier. If I sent, oops, wait, let me go to my teacher one. If I'm the teacher, and if I go to my dashboard and I click this link automatically sends me to, so I would need to put that link in something that a student could get to, right? I would need to put that link. I could maybe make it a shorter link like a bit.ly that a parent could type in, but I would need to put that link in something a kid could get to, a Google Classroom or an email. And then when you click that link, it takes you right to the student one with the code already filled in, and you just hit join. Okay, so I do think there's some preventers for kindergarten and first grade, but there are some things I want to work through it with you, and we'll see what we find that's of value to do with them together. What was the second question, Jennifer, besides the littles?
Is there a way for students to tell if they're wrong?
Yeah, so a lot of activities have that built in for them, the right and wrong. Obviously, how are you feeling today doesn't have a right or wrong, but there are a lot of activities that have that built in, and we can talk about that when we're searching through activity. When I give you a little time to look through activities, I'll point out a few. Help me remember to come back and point that out when we're going through. Okay, so I just want to show you, before you add anything to your classroom, you should think about what it's doing for you, because our job is not to buy all the nice new shiny things. Our job is to teach kids, right? And so this model talks about when you're going to add tech. Let me make that a little smaller. When you're going to add tech to your classroom, what is it really doing for you? So is it just substituting? You're going to replace that tech with a different, or something you usually do in class with tech? Is it adding something, actually making it work better, maybe for certain kids or for all kids? Is that making it more accessible for everybody? Does it actually change the task, or does it allow things that we never could have done without the tech? Because if it doesn't help you in some way, there's no reason to add it. And I would say to below grade 4, there's very few things that Desmos adds value to when you're sitting in your classroom. But far apart, we may at this point be in a place where I've always done number talks. My kids are really used to number talks, but now we're not all sitting in the same room, and I don't know how to run that now that we're apart. This tech may replace that activity. There might be a way to do that that would then add value to your classroom, your virtual classroom, while you're apart. Okay, so just a reminder that things should have a purpose. They shouldn't just be because they're bells and whistles. Okay, so remember our goals were to experience a Desmos outcome or a Desmos activity from the student perspective, and we're going to do that now. One of the most popular activities at every grade level for Desmos is the Polygraph. And so the Polygraph is a game sort of like Guess Who. Have you played Guess Who before, where like I pick one of the little people on the map and you ask me yes, no questions? Do they have glasses? Do they have long hair? And try to identify who I picked. Polygraph is built like that. And it is especially valuable for language, when you're talking about language. And so we're going to play a game called Shapes Bucket. I'm going to click this, and before we start it, I want to show you just a couple things about it. Any polygraph you do This is a really nice description here. Not every single one has description, but most of them do. If they're made by the Desmos fellows, they actually do. If they're made by somebody, you randomly found it on Facebook, then they might not have the description. Right here in the description, it includes some of the vocabulary that this particular activity could bring out. If I'm doing it with very littles, I'm going to be more interested in triangle, square, circle, smaller, words. But I could get to, if I'm in 4th, 5th grade, I could get to some of these hexagon, trapezoid, parallelogram kind of words. And so depending upon what you're focusing on, but it'll give you that vocabulary. It gives you a picture of the things that the students are going to see. They're going to get to pick one of these and describe it. Or I'll pick one. So I'll pick one, and then my partner will ask me yes, no questions and try to decide which one I picked. At first, well, I don't want to tell you too much. When you go to a polygraph, the Learn More button is really essential for when you first start doing them. It explains how it works exactly for you as a teacher. It explains what it looks like for a student, because the first time you run one, you don't know that until you do it. And so it explains how that works. There's a little pro tip when you want to play one before you've started, how you can do that, because if you want to see what it's going to work like, you either need a friend to play with you, or you need to open 2 tabs so you can play against yourself. And so it tells you how to do that. And it tells you a little bit about what you're going to see as a teacher and some teaching moves you might decide to make. So this is all good reading. Right now, you don't need to know all that because you're going to play as a student. So I want you to take your student.desmos.com tab and type in this new activity code. It is SUC2DJ. Is everybody good, Jennifer?
We're good at this time, Leanne.
Perfect. Thank you. So once you get logged in, you can go ahead and start on that practice round. I can see on my teacher board that Andy, Kim, Mary, Judy are all practicing. When you finish that practice round, they'll pair you automatically with someone. And when I'm in the classroom, I might choose to anonymize. So you're about to see that everybody's name changed. And I would do that to focus the students on the mathematical task and not the chatting with their friend.
Can anyone repeat that code? It was SUC.
Let me pop that up.
Sorry.
It's SUC2DJ. I'm going to pause you in just a minute so I can ask you a question. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Well, there you go. Are you paused? Okay, so that's something you can do anytime you can see your whole class is getting off. As I'm looking at the screens, I'm right now looking at Scott and Judy's game, and I don't see the X's. Are you guys seeing X's, like you're crossing off shapes? Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. I have an old one that was done a while ago and I could see the X's. I just want to make sure. All right. While we're stopped, I want to just point out some questions that this pair asked to Judy. Judy's apparently trying to guess Scott's, and I want to highlight this question. Does your shape have curves? Judy asked, and Scott said no. And oh, I got it. So talent, this is great. They didn't used to do this. They used to show the X's automatically, but right now, if I stopped, I might be able to ask my students, like, how many shapes can Judy cross off here after this question? And should be only that one, and that's the one she crossed off. Sometimes being very specific with your question makes it very hard to cross stuff off. Does your shape have 5 sides? Does your shape have 6 sides? Does your shape have 4 sides? So I really liked this question that Judy asked. Does your shape have more than 4 sides? Why is that a particularly good question to ask? How is that helpful? You see how many shapes she can cross off with that one question? Because she didn't just cross off, Scott said yes, she didn't just cross off the 3-sided shape. She was able to cross off any shape that had more than 4 sides. So she didn't have to go through one thing at a time, right? So a lot of times, one thing we want to work on with our students is asking better questions. This activity is a really nice way to have students focus on what is the same and what is different about a shape or about any 2 objects, and then be able to pose questions about that. Okay, I'm going to let you guys play a little bit more. Here you go. See if you can improve your questions. I'm also going to anonymize again. Okay, we're gonna stop in just another moment. So I'm give you about count of 5 before we quit. Okay, thank you guys. So after you finish, if you didn't get to the end of one round and you didn't see this, between rounds, after you finish the game with the first person you're matched with, they will ask you some questions just to help you refine your thinking. So ask a question to help figure out the difference between these 2 cards. I see somebody said, are there 3 sides? Does a shape have 4 sides? This shape that has 4 sides that are equal, does your shape have more than one right angle? So at the time, to lead a discussion with your students, you might be able to pull a couple of those questions and ask, did that help? Or is this a question? And be able to have a conversation about what makes a good question. Again, this is a really nice thing to do when you can have your kids all together. So for those of you who've been having Zoom meetings with your class and it's kind of somewhat organized chaos, this is a way to have a discussion about the mathematics. Let your students be able to interact with each other in a playful manner, but still be able to push their thinking. Again, same versus different is always a good thing to talk about. How to pose a good question is something they'll need at all grade levels. And so these are good things. In addition, another thing that Polygraph does for you, I'm going to pull out of that. Another thing that Polygraph does for you is really help you address vocabulary. So if I had seen people first saying things like corners or bottom or things like that, I might let them play the first round and then I might stop and say, okay, I saw these different words, pointy, corners, and there's a math word for that. It's called vertices. So now we're going to use this math vocabulary. You're no longer allowed to say pointy things or corners. You're now going to say vertices. We're going to practice that vocabulary so you can give them a reason to use that vocabulary in a context. And so that's vocabulary is develops really naturally in Polygraph because you want to bring that up. I was watching a 4th grade class use Polygraph, and I'm going to just tell you right down here where it says Maven the Math blog post. You might want to write that down, especially if you teach 4th grade or around 4th grade. It's a story about how Polygraph really improved their lesson on shapes, and it's pretty short. And so it gives you some really nice ideas for how that you might integrate that in your classroom. But I can see that distance-wise, you could run this while you had your kids together. You could pause them. You have that control, even though they're in 100 different houses, to stop them all at the same time and have a discussion. And then you can let them play again. All right, so Polygraph is one great thing you can do. There's lots of different polygraphs on topics, and you'll be able to see that later. Another thing you can do is called an activity builder. Some activity builders are very varied. Some of them are about practice. I saw some really nice ones about practicing fraction skills, and they did let students know whether they were right or wrong after they tried to add the fractions. And some activity builders are more about raising an issue that you're about to teach. This one that I've chosen would be really nice to use as you're moving from addition to multiplication thinking. And it also could replace your traditional number talk conversation that you would have had in your class. So we're going to go to that one next. It's an activity builder. It's called How Many Peaches? So in your student.desmos.com, you're going to change codes. Let me put that up so you can see it better. I'm going to view my teacher dashboard. And so you're going to go to student.desmos.com, and the code is MTY494. And Jennifer, I'm going to pause this before we get started. So, okay. Before we get started on this, were there any questions in the chat that I should talk about?
There's not any questions at this time, Leanne.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. All right, so MTY494. And this, I could really see this fitting into a class that has had a healthy number talk routine going in their classroom, and you want to be able to do that while they're at a distance. I could imagine sending this link home to parents, having students and parents do this together, and then when you come together, be able to talk about the answers and the things that the thinking that you see. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start. This one's called How Many Peaches? I'm going to unpause you and let you begin. Before I do that, you can see my teacher screen right now. And one thing I'm able to do is I can choose that I want to paste this so you're only doing the first and second slides. And that way, if Andy was really fast, he wouldn't be able to work his way all the way through the activity. That's something I use a lot in class. But right now, because we're working at home, this is probably something this particular activity is something I would let kids work all the way through. Then when we got together, I would have looked at student answers and I'd have a few I wanted to pull to discuss. So I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to let you guys go ahead and get going. You get to draw with on this activity, so have fun. There you go. Pausing in 3, 2, 1. A really interesting question came up. Kim just brought up an interesting question that maybe there's another layer of peaches under there. We're not really sure. So I happen to know the person who packed the box, and he told me that there's only one layer of peaches in there. So if you're worried about that, I'm just going to let you know there's actually only one layer. Okay, I'll let you keep working now. Unpause. Okay, we're gonna stop and look at this. If you have a sentence you're in the middle of writing, I'm not gonna pause it. I'm gonna let you finish that. But I'd like to, if you can get my screen back up to the front on your video, on your computer, I wanna show you some of the thinking that I'm seeing as a teacher. So as a teacher, I'm in teacher view here. When I'm in summary view, that's when I see the chart that shows me what slide everybody's on, right? And that's really helpful for me to know how much more time I need to give my class. And if I wanted to, if everybody was really confused and I wanted to just pull up this slide and show them how they could, instead of using the pen, maybe they could use a straight line tool, which was really fun for me because my drawing without the straight line was really hard. So I could do that from the student view. But when I talk to the class, I usually use my teacher view for the most part. And so I can see the different drawings that people made here. I'm going to choose overlay here because I really like that. Oh, just kidding. That's crazy. That's not what I want. Where was the one? Is it in here? Just a minute ago, I had, oh, here it is. On this one, where everybody told me their response, an overlay doesn't make any sense, but I can click summary. And what I can see is that everybody in the class agrees with 27 except for Scott. And so then I would want to talk about, does Scott agree or disagree with us? Does he have the same answer or not? A lot of times in a real classroom, this will not all be the same. I'll have half the people have one number and then a pretty, you know, I'll have maybe 2 or 3 different answers that students might have got. This is a really nice way for me to group and see where they are. And if I wanted to call on somebody to explain thinking, I can see like, oh, I need to call on Scott to explain that thinking. That's a nice feature. Now we're here at this first one. How did you see it? And there's a lot of different drawings on here I really like. I'm gonna, there's a couple different things you might be emphasizing. You might be wanting to think about additive versus multiplicative thinking. Is somebody doing 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, or is somebody doing 4 times 6? And so I might want to be looking for slides that would give me the opportunity to talk about that, or descriptions. And I think even though Andy's description says he saw 6 rows of 4, so he was probably multiplying, I think this image could bring up the idea of adding 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. So I'm going to take that picture, and now I have that captured. And then if I wanted one maybe that was about multiplying, this one might be a good one. So I'll just take this picture. There's several of them I might have been able to use. I can take those two, and especially if I've given it to my kids and we're going to come back and talk about it, I can take those snapshots and I can prepare something. Right now here I have only 2 snapshots, so it's pretty easy to prepare. I'm going to take these 2. I think I want Andy's to be first. And so I'm going to take these and I'm going to talk then about the kids. When I present this, I'll be able to say, here's 2 ways 2 of your classmates showed their thinking, you know, and talk about how they're the same and how they're different. So really facilitates nicely people being able to show how the kids are thinking about something. Another thing I might be wanting to think about is area. And I think this picture here, where I could count each of those little guys compared to maybe something like this or this, would be a good ways, or this one right here where Judy might have gone. I wonder if she did 6 times 4 and 3 times 1, or if she just did plus 3. But so those might be, so you can, depending upon what you're trying to emphasize, you can choose the ones you would like to show. There's also associative and commutative. Somebody might have put, I see Michelle here has 4 times 6 plus 3. And then, but Kim did 6 times 4 and then plus 3, and being able to bring out that those things are the same. So anytime you can get students thinking on the table, that's a great time to be able to really talk to them about the mathematics they're doing. And so Desmos really is a great tool to allow you to see that. Okay. Jennifer, are there any more questions hanging out? Do you guys want to see? I'll show you the other. They're like, well, how else do people do it? So this is, looks like,
there's no questions.
Okay, good. Mary, were you counting by ones? I counted them one at a time. Nice. That's a perfect way to show me counting one at a time. I like that. And so we have counting to additive to multiplicative, all those different things. These people who had gone up and down and seen columns of 4 are now seeing rows of 6. So I like those. And here we have some different areas. Judy was thinking areas before. She's still thinking areas, but she found different areas. Same with Samina, different areas. So those are all some different ways. When we go back to this guy, I want to show you some things that are featured. When I go to this activity, when I open it up as the teacher, oops, just kidding. When I open this activity right here in Desmos as a teacher, I see a little bit about what it's like. This little notation right here tells me that this doesn't work very well on a phone. Most Desmos activities do not work really well on a phone. It's hard to see the whole thing on the phone screen. That doesn't mean I, as a teacher, haven't done one before on a phone to try to figure it out, but I wouldn't assign it to your students if you know they're relying on phone. There are a few that are mobile friendly. These work really well on a tablet and a laptop. They also have a teacher guide up here that I can look at. It has me a checklist, try the activity, figure out what your learning targets are. Are you trying to go from additive to multiplicative thinking? Are you trying to introduce area? Are you trying to introduce arrays? What are you after? And plan what your kids who finish quickly are going to do. So that third screen was like find another way. Your quick students were going to do that. You needed everybody to at least finish slide 2 to be able to have the conversation, right? So if that was happening in class, when I saw that everybody was finished with slide 2, I was okay to stop it. But it's nice to have something for the students who finish. So they have these kind of things to go with. You can write your learning targets. And then for me, use this page to plan your teacher pacing, like when are you going to pause? They have some tips. Students might ask whether there are any hidden. And I was ready for that because they gave me that tip. There are not. So when I saw somebody wondering about that, I was able to tell. Then they told me what to look for to run the conversation. And they gave me a link to some student samples. It's never as good to use other people's student samples as compared to things that are actually happening in your class. So that's what you would prefer to do, is use the ones from your class. And that's what I did when I talked to you. But they did have a link for student samples on this. And then discussion ideas, go back to that other tip. So they have this already ready for you. To be able to make notes. You can have made your class code in advance and have that written down. I really like that feature. So on our document for the thing, the teacher guide is linked here. The student work samples are also linked there. And you saw me take those snapshots really fast. If you were trying to remember how to take snapshots later, LearnDesmos.com is a place where they have just amazing help for teachers, because we're doing this so fast and you may come back and be like, how do I do that? Their videos that they make on things are, I'm going to open this for just a second and then stop it. This one's 5 minutes. That's about the longest one I've ever seen. They're usually about 2 minutes. There's more down here. So if you go to the LearnDesmos.com, you'll see all the different things for running classroom activities, and you can watch any that you're kind of wondering about. How did I do that pacing again? How did she do the anonymize or pause? There's little videos. Michael Fenton, who is a Clovis Unified graduate, is the voice you hear on these. So that's kind of fun. It's one of our very own guys doing those. So LearnDesmos.com, that's the place that you can go to get more help. Teacher.desmos.com, that's how you get started. When you want to start your own activity, teacher.desmos.com is for you. So until now, you've been at student.desmos.com. Teacher.desmos.com is how you run an activity. So our last thing for today is I want to take you there. Is there any questions or comments I should hit before we go to that next one, Jennifer?
There's no questions, Leanne.
Perfect. Okay, so go into your browser, type teacher.desmos.com. I'm not sure if yours looks exactly like mine. There's a lovely section up here for resources, especially for while we're doing this distance learning. That's great. But up in this corner, you're going to need to sign in. And because you might want to come back to this a long time from now, signing in with Google is a nice way to sign in. So you'll go ahead and make an account. By the way, there's activities that aren't just math. There's science activities. There's all kinds of activities in here. I've seen people put social studies questions in here for people to be able to interact with as a debate. So it doesn't have to be math to use Desmos. Okay, so once you've made your account, you can add any activity you want. Now mine is pretty full, but over here there's this section called Your Activities. And I can see history. Yours should be blank probably. I can see that we did the PD opener today. We did the shape bucket. We did how many peaches. I can see all the other things I played with recently. Anything I made a class code for, I can see. I can go way back here in time just to show you how long they last and see my session that I made on Polygraph. It's inactive, but I can still see it. So I can see my, oops, not that one, just kidding. I need to go back. I picked the wrong one, sorry. I can see way back. That one was one I made when I was trying to learn how to do it. Here's the one that was 32 students, so I can reactivate that. And I can go back and see my students played the game and what they did, so I can be able to do that. So you can be able to go back, you can see what your students did, even if they're doing it away from you, you'll be able to come back and see their work. So that's there. Let me go back. Okay. Collections. This is where you're going to save activities. So I have a lot. You should have none. Is that right? You don't have anything in there? New collections? I'm going to show you how to put stuff in there. What I would do is make a new collection right here and label it with your grade. So if I was a second grade teacher, I'm going to put grade 2 and create a new collection. Because just pretend you start using this a lot and then later you get moved to grade 3, then you'll have a collection of grade 2 activities, a collection of grade 3 activities. Now getting out of collections, I'm going to go to home. And any activity they have that looks interesting to me, any activity that we did today, I will be able to add into that. So right now, what's up is 6th grade, but I'm going to show you how to do it in your grade level. So if I wanted this balloon float activity, all I do is click add, and then I'm going to choose. I have a lot of collections, but you should probably only have one right now, and I can choose to put that in my grade 6, right? And add that. And then it'll be there the next time I want it. I don't have to go hunt for it or Google, it'll be there. Okay. So if you have a teacher.desmos.com account, then you can save activities and be able to come back to them. You never have to be hunting. All right, so at the very bottom of this, I want to, at this point, make sure they have this activity. Control copy. Jennifer, can you put that in the chat, or do you have that?
I'm sorry, Leanne, say that again.
Can you put this document in the chat for me? Otherwise, I'm going to have to stop sharing for a minute. Okay, thank you. If you would do that, that'd be great. So in these last 5 minutes, what I'd like to do is let you see the wide number of activities that are here. Across the bottom, there are specific grade levels, but I have you landing when you follow that link on one that has some things highlighted. So if I was a kindergarten teacher, I might choose to look at this one. And if I was a 5th grade teacher, I might choose to look at this one. just so that you can see some of the features that's there. I'm going to show you again where that is on that slide. So if you follow the link in the chat, this first one that says CUSD activity, Desmos activities for elementary, Jennifer has this all sorted out by grade level so nicely for us there. And that's the one we're going to explore in right now. I also want to remind you that now that you have this document, that I highly recommend reading this Maven of Math blog post. That's Jamie Gardner. Maven of Math is her Twitter handle, which is why that's called that, because it describes that 4th grade class. Really, really nice. All of these places are places you can look for activities, but the CUSD one, we have vetted those and they're separated by grade really nicely. So that's the one I would start with. Okay, so as you scroll through, I'd like to let you pop one up, and I'm going to show you how you can look through them. So if I want to see this activity, when I click on it, the link is going to be right above. And when you get here, you might wonder how I can see it. Right here is student preview. And when you click student preview for whatever activity you picked, you'll be able to see what it looks like to students. The teacher notes for that slide will be right at the bottom, but if it's in your way, you can close them. But that's the things I would do when I was teaching right there. On this one, I can just play. It's a game about coordinates that helps the kids know how to write coordinates on a 4-quadrant axis. And so I can go through and see whatever I want to see about this activity and play with it. It doesn't save it. You don't have to create a code to be able to do that. And you can play that. So again, I highlighted yellow ones. A lot of these have, let me get to that. Some very playful pieces on this one. So this one is one that somebody asked about showing correct answers. This is one that it's called Adding Whole Numbers. And I think it was in, where was it? It was in 1st through 3rd grade, Adding Whole Numbers. The younger the child, the more support they're going to need. A 4th grader still can have a wonderful time doing it, but we're going to go for the student preview, and I'll just want to show you how it tells you you're right. So we're going to deal out cards, and we're going to try to create 2 groups of cards with the same sum. So what I saw a lot of students do is use a fact family and go, well, 1 and 2 equals 3, and that would be their, and see, it says, I'm right. I scored 3 and the high score is 3. If a whole class was playing, it might say that the high score was 4, which means that somebody used 4 cards. And in fact, oh, I gotta try again to do it. I can rearrange and manage to use all 4. And so there are a lot of activities where the kids try something and it tells them they're right, just to let you know that that happens. Are there any last questions? Because now you have this huge exploration that you can do. You have so many resources, probably more than you'll ever need. Are there any questions that you have before we end here? Okay. So if you are looking for an activity and it's not on this list, remember Google is your friend. If you search Desmos Activity Builder and then in your Google, you may still find some. Or you can always email your friendly neighborhood TSA. The math TSAs are happy to help you find an activity that's just exactly what you're looking for. Okay. Thank you so much for coming today.